You are listening to Purpose PR Agency Radio, where I connect you with celebrities, media personalities, motivational speakers, CEOs, and inspirational authors. Each guest on the podcast episode is here to give you amazing jewels and help take your brand to the next level. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this amazing podcast episode. And I'm your host, Purposeful Porsha. Hello, and welcome again to another great episode of Purpose PR Agency Radio. And today I have another phenomenal guest. His name is Mr. Donavan S West. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about him in a quick bio, as we always do. But I don't want to take the whole entire intro with his bio because I have great questions that's going to be amazing for the listening audience. So let me just get started. Donavan S West. He's recognized for his leadership and his community efforts all throughout Philadelphia. He has an extensive and impressive bio, but for sake of time, what I'm going to do is just cut it down just a little bit, as well as share great information that I know these listeners are going to want to hear. Donavan serves as the COO of People for People, one of the largest nonprofit organizations in Philadelphia. He is also the CEO and the founder of Culturally Congruent Solutions, which is a boutique consulting firm that offers strategic, forward-thinking, and industry-specific coaching and training to support businesses. This organization also serves as coaching for individuals and families. He's also affectionately known as the Hitchman, or to some, the Love Doctor. Welcome to the show, Donavan.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I absolutely was impressed with you the first time I met you. It's just to let my listeners know. I had the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting him, and he was introduced to me as the Hitchman of Philadelphia. So I was so impressed because the only thing in my mind I can think of is, of course, I'm sure you get the parallel all the time, the movie Hitch with Will Smith. So it was really, really fun just to meet someone, the real live Hitch, I should say, in the area. And I wanted to know so much more about you. So thank you again for coming on. And let's talk about a few things that you offer. Most importantly, I want to share with the listeners that he serves from Philadelphia to Atlanta. That's your footprint. Am I correct?
Yes. I've had the opportunity to also participate in different activities in Atlanta as well as in DC. And we have some other plans also to soon be in New York, as well as a couple of other areas as we're, cultivating the environment, making sure that we got our sponsors and our supporters in place before we go into those new regions, if you will.
I love Atlanta. Atlanta's been good to me. I had a few clients down in that area. It's a different flow than the Philadelphia, Jersey, New York area, but they're so welcoming to anything that anyone up north, I should say, is offering, even though I kind of want to say it's kind of a melting pot in that area. How are you received down in Atlanta?
Oh, very well, as a matter of fact, especially when we talk on the topic of relationships, especially, So, yeah, they call me Hitchmaster, and the reason for that is just, being clutch when it comes to communication in many instances. So, and in Atlanta, as you know, there's a huge challenge, in terms of the ratio of men to women, and then, especially with it being a very progressive environment, there are a lot of people that are in that space where they've achieved certain accolades and reached certain echelons in their career, but personally, in terms of, relationships and things of that nature, there seems to still be some challenges. So when we often get into those spaces, those circles where we're talking about relationships and different ways to look at the situation, different ways to communicate, there's usually a good captive audience.
Right. One thing I wanted to mention, and I didn't put this in your bio, but it was really important for me to share, is that you are now working closely with the mayor of Philadelphia, or I should say you were appointed by the mayor and the city council, basically working with African American males. That's really, really important because I want the listeners to know that he's not just solely based on just the love part of relationships, but businesses and also helping nurture and build our young men. So congratulations to you on that. And can you share with us exactly what are you doing in that capacity of working with young African American males?
Absolutely, and thank you for highlighting that. So one of the things that I do, especially in that space, I'm on the Mayor's Commission on African American males. And, so it's basically a commission with a group of other men throughout the city. And you could say, a diaspora of professionals are represented there at these meetings where we talk about everything in the area from health to crime and, to policy to business. So these are some major components that, really deal with how it impacts the black male, and also more importantly, what's the butterfly effect? How does it then impact the family, the community, the city at large? And so often when there are different things that take place in the environment, such as for instance, if you were to if you're local and you're thinking about stop and frisk. That's an issue. And so what are the details behind that? What are the stats to support that? Why would we take one position versus another? When you talk about, business and, especially small business, are there certain things within new policies that have come out over the past couple of years, that would adversely, impact or affect, not just, black men, but just overall business overall. And when you look at, the black man's perspective on it, it's also something that, should be heard. And speaking of being heard, it is not actually, a rarity to actually see the mayor himself, attend some of these meetings. So that's, for those that are listening, this is not necessarily one of those, storefront, creations by government to state that there is some representation, but you actually do have an active ear in terms of the mayor being present at some of these meetings, as well as other key stakeholders.
And let me just share the importance of relationship building itself. So this is where Donavan was. He focuses and teaches and trains on building relationships via business or personal relationships, but the importance and the parallel of him working closely with African American males, and of course he shared the butterfly effect. If you have yourself in a position where you're able to network and build these relationships within the city and meet prominent people, then that will also help you, not to say per se remove you or excuse you from some of the situations that may just appear in your life. But if you have these relationships with people, it will help you kind of, I want to say not get out of it, but because they know you, it will help in your favor. And so I love the fact that you just do training across the board. And this is helping teach our men how to get out of their shell and not to feel too prideful to build relationships out of their inner circle. And do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think at the end of the day, what you need to do is really take inventory of a number of things that are happening when you're communicating, when you're moving, and especially when it comes to the situation as it relates to our black men. There are a lot of things that are happening at that very moment when you actually are moving about the town. Where do you work? Are you working? Who are you working with? Who are you communicating with? How are you communicating? What's the quality of that communication? When you're communicating, what is it that you want to actually get across? What's the end game, basically? How are you feeling in the moment that you're communicating? These are a lot of questions that, a lot of times when I'm asking them, I try to slow it down so it doesn't come across as rapid fire. But the reality of it all is that you really need to be mindful of these different things so that you can really become a communication master yourself, and help to shift the narrative about how black men move. And many many men move in a similar space in terms of being able to communicate in a way that is effective and interact and demonstrate, their level of mastery. Because, the narrative out there, right, the prejudice out there, the media often paints a much different picture. And it's so important that every man understand that regardless of their position, their station, they are representatives. They are an ambassador in certain ways. So, I won't beat up your ears about it, but you get it.
Well, I mean, I think it's necessary, not only for the male audience, who are listening to this podcast to hear and to feel affirmed with that, but also a reminder for, the female listeners, because we kind of think, after a while, you start to think the way that the media paints the picture, and so I think that it's a plus that we have a person such as yourself in this position that's saying you're helping create the atmosphere, you're helping set the tone of how our men should think of themselves or put themselves in the right places and surround themselves with the right people in order to get the better results than what has been given. So in your training, you do so many steps, and one thing that you and I have spoke about, a while back was self-love, and the steps to loving yourself, it puts you in a position where you can receive love and respect from others. Do you teach this also to, outside of relationship counseling that you offer? Do you teach this to your CEOs and COOs of corporations or nonprofit organizations about, loving yourself in order to get the respect from your employees, loving yourself in order to get the respect from your colleagues? Because some people who just beat the pavement of the power position, I don't really see it as a self-love, because they have to put this authoritative role on to get respect. But if they love themselves and they're a teammate, a worker with their team instead of a person who dictates. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that, it's a major component of it. As a matter of fact, often when I'm doing some level of, coaching, communication coaching or C-suite level coaching, for executives, they're a bit surprised by how much I focus in this particular area in terms of them getting to a level of understanding and then hopefully graduating to a level of mastery. The idea, the concept that, the more that they actually love themselves, the happier they are overall, the more that energy will also transfer onto other people as they are doing their business. And so, often you start thinking about, there's another perspective that I'll often offer, and that is, how do you shift from, looking at things as a responsibility to looking at things as an opportunity? And that's one of the major components of that, is that once you have, you've gotten to a point where you understand where you are emotionally, how you feel about yourself, now you start to talk about looking at what you do in a professional setting as more of an opportunity and less of a responsibility, because, with the opportunity comes additional energy, excitement. You're more optimistic. You can be creative at times. And often we find ourselves in a position, especially for positions of leadership, where we need to really infuse that level of optimism and excitement, just overall energy in the people that we lead. It's often hard to do that when we're looking at it more so as a responsibility. So, you'll go through, the normal steps that you typically take, and then often, the tone and your energy overall are going to dictate pretty much something similar, or even a more diluted version of that, and often put you in a position where you're frustrated. You're not getting as much as you really need to get out of your team. So, yes, I do talk a little bit about, and I say a little bit because sometimes people, they go off in a different direction if you go too deep. But I do stick my toe in that topic a little bit by way of talking to them about, well, how do you feel? Where did that come from? Where did your feeling come from? And and sometimes if they want to divulge more, then we go deeper, and then we start talking about, how there are certain routine expectations that were built out of past experiences, and how often that gives people a jaded sense of what they can get done in that day, or how certain interactions are going to take place. And so we do a light version of them, starting to heal from that, to give themselves some of certain, decisions that they've made, or how things are blowing up, or forgiving others, and really drawing the parallel between how these work relationships are very much like, personal relationships. They have a lot of the same components. So it is a process, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not just in the relationship world that these different components around, healing and self-love and forgiveness and trust and all, they don't just exist there. They exist very much so in the working world. And in many instances, unfortunately, but in many instances, we actually have more time in that space than we do in the personal space, right?
Absolutely.
So if we can learn it at work, or learn certain components at work, it will actually transfer into our personal life as we, are going to, leverage what we've learned and what works in different scenarios, and because that now becomes the demonstration of mastery of some of these areas that we just now talked about.
I think, for me, I don't ever want to do the expected. Of course, when people who are in the surrounding areas or just read your bio, they just want to focus just on the intimate, personal side of relationships, But I know that there's so many different facets to who you are. And also, there's so many spaces and people that you touch that you're able to allow them to see themselves in a different light. So I would say, just for, even for the listeners who are listening to this podcast, I had the opportunity to just have a conversation with Donavan, and the next thing you know, I felt like I was at a therapist's office, and I was like, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's not really what I thought was going to happen. But I will say, in peace, he does ask, specific questions that kind of make you think. And more importantly, what I will say I love about your character is that he's open to share. He's very transparent, so you won't feel like you're in it alone. And so where it can be just a regular conversation, it turns into you're talking to one of your old friends that you grew up with. And I will say, a nod to you was kind of like a safe space. And you do want that when you're dealing with someone who you're having consultation with, someone that is going to, help let you see in a different direction, because, perception is everything. And so you can kind of come off and feel as though, at first you're looking at, I would say, someone in his position one way, but then it's like you realize his questions are, it's a place where you can really see yourself. So I just wanted to put that out there for people who are just starting to listen to this podcast. And, yes, he's a very educated man, but he's also very down to earth and cool. So I don't want anyone to be intimidated by how he's phrasing these sentences. But I will tell you, if you were blessed enough to get in his space for just a few moments, then you would say, well, wait a minute, how did that come out? And how did you get that out of me, man?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. One of the things one of the no-nos in the industry is that you don't really share much about yourself, that you keep those lines separated. And I messed up on that area on purpose. I believe that culturally, there's a challenge there where you're just basically, listening and making a small comment here and there, in terms of, I understand, interesting, okay, but you're not really, you don't really have much skin in the game. I believe at the end of the day that when you start talking about levels of intimacy with someone that you're talking with, they need to know that you have some skin in the game. They need to know that you're not necessarily just judging them or listening at, like a judge would, but that actually you're having more of a conversation. And I believe that, many of us will actually take off the mask, or not necessarily, or tell the representative that normally shows up at these types of conversations that, give them some time off, give them a break, and actually bring our true, authentic self to the conversation if they feel that, the environment is safe. And often, what it takes is just, sharing a little bit about yourself in that space so that they understand that you're human, that you have these same challenges, and we're all in this together, essentially.
I absolutely agree. And for me, I will say sometimes I normally take a quick music break, but this is such a very needed conversation. So I'm going to skip that part and we're just going to keep on talking. But I wanted my listeners to know, even for those who see or hear us in a certain position, like people know me as a publicist, they see me, doing this, that, and the third, or I'm with this person or that person. But there's also a place in me, and I'm being transparent and vulnerable on purpose for this episode, because I don't want people to look at those pictures on social media and think, wow, she's got it going on. I will say, for me, my guiding light is my spiritual core. And I too hurt, and I too have places of healing and wanting to do over my do-over is my little saying that I always say. And I wanted to bring to the attention of the listener, not that he told me all his life, but he just told me enough where I could feel that it's okay to share. And I agree. You want someone that's going to hold your hand and then help you get to the point where you can go through it. And remember that the key word in that sentence is through. You went through it. You're out of it. And now, you're able to, you don't go through something just to keep it to yourself. You go through something to tell someone else as a testimony or a testament, like, hey, I've been there. It's not easy. It's a couple of thorns in your foot, but you're going to walk through this and you're going to be fine. Trust me. And I just think that your style of listening, your style of teaching, your style of, hey, Porsche, look at it this way. It was well needed because I felt like I was talking to a friend, and it was, and it is, truthfully, guys, it is a no judgment zone. So those who are in the New York area all the way down to the ATL, if you have the opportunity to set up consultation or time with this man, then you won't feel like, oh, it was just hype. It really was like you were sitting with your brother or your boy or, one of your good friends. So I just wanted to put that disclosure out there because people get so caught up in that 2-second picture that's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Not saying it's a facade, but he used the word mask. We're having great days and we're having bad days, whether it's from Donavan or myself. And we all need someone to know that we're just like you, So
that's it.
So let's take a twist and go into the well-known area of your expertise, and let's talk about relationships. And where I'm talking about not corporate nor male to male bonding. I'm talking about the relationships that you help that are in the intimate space. I know that you do something called the relationship script. You also had something that just came up called Fantasy Island, which seemed really, really dope. And I wanted you to tell the listeners about the relationship script and also how they can, stay in contact with you with that.
Well, great. Thank you so much. So the relationship script basically is it's an opportunity to create additional dimensions to conversation about relationships. Nobody wants to, let's be honest. How many people really want to sit on a couch and talk about relationships or get into that space? Often when we're talking about relationships, we're like at a restaurant, a bar or something, or you're at somebody's house, you're having some wine or, fellas, you might be drinking some beers and you might, have a comment or two. But we're not in the clinical space. So what I thought I would do is I would provide what I call the proverbial gummy vitamin bear. It's a vitamin gummy bear, basically. And what it is It's something you want inside of something you need, right? And the goal of that is to actually make sure that you're talking about relationships, but you're having fun while you're doing it. So where we do it at, we do it in restaurants and lounges, and we allow you to actually bring your authentic self to the table. And many people say, well, how are you going to do that in public space? The way we do that is we ask you to write any question or situation at all, anything, on a 3x5 card. And we drop it into this, what we call random and anonymous bucket. And we're going to answer these questions. Now, myself and a co-host, we have amazing co-hosts. I mean, co-hosts that are known through the city as well as the country that are clinicians that work in this area. But also, more importantly, I handpick them because I know them personally, and they're going to bring it. They're going to be as is, no frills with you. They're very personable. These are people, not just doctors or whatever, and that are just sitting there real stiff. They're going to talk to you like I would talk to them. And so we ask you to fill out that 3x5 card. You got a question or two, you have a situation, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're answering your questions. We're actually talking to you and not coming up with this, although it's called the relationship script, it's not scripted in that space. It's very much reflective of where your interests and your concerns are, where your needs are, because I don't want you to come here and hear us preach to you. We're not here to do that at all. What we do is we pull up those questions in the segment of the event called Random and Anonymous, and we answer them straight out. And then, of course, we get some additional feedback from the audience. So that's one part. The other thing that we do with those same questions is I actually have actors on site. And these actors actually act out the scenario. And it's amazing. I'm talking about people love this probably the most out of all the different activities that we have going on during this time. And so they provide yet another dimension to, whatever your problem or situation may be. And then, of course, a little bit later on, because often there are so many questions, we do a rapid fire where we answer those questions quickly back to back, and we go through some more of those questions. We also have other segments like a yeah or no. That's like a true or false, right? That's a little country version of true or false, where we talk about different aspects of relationships, and it's a contest. So we ask participants to come in and answer the questions, and then you win some nice gifts. We have other contests and segments. It's just packed full of different activities that are interactive, high energy, fun. Oh, I didn't even mention the fact that we got a great DJ. So we have these.
Gotta have music with the food.
So, So this is not like back-to-back activities like you're in some super workshop or some relationship expo. There's nothing wrong with that at all, by the way, because we're planning something, pretty soon ourselves. It's not that, but the DJ just helps to kind of, as we transition, we got these moments we call mingle moments.
Gotcha.
And our DJ, DJ 007, he plays what we call the relationship script, remix. And it's just all types of amazing music. You're having a good time. You're networking. And this is not a battle of the sexes. This is not a speed dating event. This is an event about just how do we learn more and communicate more transparently? How do we just function, period, as people that are relational? And I think it goes a long way to say that this event is about cultivating that kind of space. So you're going to get to know people. By the way, this is not something just for singles. I'm talking about if you're dating someone, you're in a committed relationship, if you're engaged, if you're married, if you're reconciling, if you're getting counseling. It doesn't matter what stage of the relationship spectrum you're actually in. We're fine. You're going to enjoy. You're going to get something out of it. And so, in addition to that 3x5 card, we ask you what your status is. We ask you if you're single, married, or in a committed relationship. Because I even have gift bags that are broken down based off of what your status is. So
very nice.
You get something that's unique, right? Again, it's just well thought out. Because at the end of the day, I thought to myself, what would someone that doesn't normally come to an event like this really need to experience in order to come again? Right? This is not just a one-off. This is not a holiday thing. I want this to be also being open enough to have this dialogue with a professional, to talk more intimately with your significant other, if you're in that space. That's what this whole movement is about. So it's been, this is my baby, as you can hear me talking all excitedly about it.
Absolutely, as you should. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been crafting this, and shout out to Dr. Dave Pulley. He and I initially kicked it off a little less than 2 years ago with the inaugural event, and it's been rolling ever since. We've been very fortunate to do it here in Philadelphia, also in D.C., and we are visiting Atlanta in an official capacity October 4th. We're excited about that, but we have some additional sites that we're going to be visiting here in Philadelphia, as well as D.C. before the end of the year. We may, try to get New York in there, but not sure just yet.
Well, you answered some of the questions that I was going to ask you in that. So, first question I was going to ask is, are you going to take this on the road? Are you traveling? Because I think it's a well-needed space, especially for our culture, even though I'm sure it's not just, pinpointed to, African Americans and Hispanics, but I think that it's a good event and a great purpose behind it. And another thing I wanted to say was shout out to 007. I know him and his wife, and he is a phenomenal DJ. So I will let you all know that you're gonna have a great time just listening to how he mixes things up. And just wanted to give him a shout out. He's a real cool dude, and his craft is amazing. So I didn't know that you had 007 now.
I've known him. Oh yeah. It's a small world, right? But
right.
I've known him a long time, and he's not just somebody who just spends. He's someone that uses me when he needs me. So that's the beautiful thing about it, is that if you stop him and ask him, he'll give you a testimonial in a minute that if he's in a tough place, he'll reach out and say less, man. Let's get through this. So that's why definitely I roll out my boy DJ 007 and all the other DJs that I know. No hate. I love you guys, but you know how that goes. So,
I sure
do. It's an exciting situation, and I'm just overjoyed. Now, the most recent event we did is called Fantasy Island. And each event, I may not mention that earlier, but each event has a different theme. So we've had different themes like he say, she say, the games that we play. We've had situationships. We've had man cave edition. And more recently we've had Fantasy Island, which Fantasy Island focused on, what are the fantasies versus the realities that we typically experience or expect when it comes to relationships. And we did a deeper dive, and shout out to my amazing co-host, the phenomenal one, Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson. She joined us, and Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson, she's been on the Today Show, Good Morning Fox, and Good Morning in America. So she's an amazing, phenomenal woman, and someone that I've been blessed to work with on a couple of occasions now. And we just tackled a lot of those different questions and those, the presumptions, if you will, about, relationships on the front end, that honeymoon period, and all those things that typically happen in terms of, when we are in a fantasy space as it relates to relationships. And then what are some of the, the realities? Some of those realities are harsh. Some of them are I guess you could call it sobering, right? When you recognize really what it is versus, what you thought it was going to be. But, how do we navigate through them? And more importantly, how do we mitigate the drop by way of being, by way of being more authentic, being more transparent, being more vulnerable up front, and as I say, showing some of those dents early in the game, right?
Gotcha.
And, we all can't present ourselves shiny and new without flaw to one another. That, often we know where that comes from. That comes from a desire to be accepted, a fear of being rejected. But nonetheless, the we don't do it now, we're going to definitely, expose it later at some point. And so, part of that is getting to a place, as you mentioned earlier, where you love yourself enough that you also can be honest enough about some areas that you're working on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being mindful that if you have a spirit of continuous improvement, then then you should be in a good place overall. You're not going to do this total transformation, but it is about progress, not perfection, isn't it?
Right. You're right. You're right. And I mean, it's good to hear you say that. And I think I asked you, like, of course, not on this podcast, but I'm going to ask for the people who are listening. So why focus on relationship? Like, why love? Like, it's a very small place where men like to visit and stay. And so I would say, it's good to hear, a person who's not afraid to tackle the issues, to bring things to the light, and to say, I like to talk about this because this is X, Y, and Z, my warm and fuzzy place, or this is my place of transparency, or, so on and so forth. But why do you focus so clearly on building relationships and love?
Well, the first part is that, like, love is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by love is everything. Love is joy. Love is pain. Like, and it is in both, like, the extreme of both emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deal with love. Like,
Mm-hmm.
extreme joy, like the highest form of joy that you could possibly feel is going to be brought to you by love, right? Like a commercial. This was brought to you by
Right.
love, And the same thing, when you have the level of pain you may feel,
Mm-hmm.
often could, people may say, well, what about hate? Well, hate is different.
Mm-hmm.
Hate often can come from lack of love, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lack of love for someone can be extreme hate or extreme sense of love of self, and it being endangered and things of that nature can also lead to levels of hate for others. But in terms of pain, like actually feeling the depths of pain that you could feel, typically can come from love as well.
Mm-hmm.
Going through a serious breakup or losing a loved one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So love encompasses the whole thing, and so that's why love is so important to not understand fully, because there's certain things unless you take some real time and for introspection and really peel back the layers, you may not know why love exists in certain areas of your life. But it is important to embrace it. It is important to not necessarily run from it,
Mm-hmm.
because it is extremely powerful. I understand why it's very intimidating, but it's something that you should be willing to talk about, especially as we mature and we get to, we have some more experience and we're able to actually communicate, after reflecting on our past. What was your first, examples of love? A colleague of mine mentioned, we were talking about, influencers in our life that were men. And, he mentioned that the number one male influencer of his life, at least that popped up, was his uncle, because it was the first man that ever said, "I love you."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was, that was powerful for him, So, how do you actually digest this thing called love? And why does it have, for many of us, it has so many restrictions because of what we've experienced? But the reality is that it can actually be applied in many different ways if we're open to it. So that's one component. The other side, when you talk about relationships, is that, well, I believe that today more than ever, relationships are extremely, extremely necessary and significant. It really becomes the rare but key component that we need to move forward. Whether you're talking about a successful relationship in terms of an intimate relationship, or if you're talking about in your profession.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we're in a space where you're an amazing publicist.
Thank you.
And I've heard a lot about you, and you're very welcome. You're extremely talented. But here's the thing, though, Porsha. If I don't like you, I'm not going to use you.
Mm-hmm.
If if I don't really care for who you are and we don't vibe personally, I'm not going to use you. The reality of it is that what I present and what you present, while there may be some unique nuances of what we do or how we may do it, we're also obsolete. There are, literally my phone would run over itself in terms of other contacts that do the same thing that you do overall. So with that being said, why would I choose you? Well, I'm going to choose you because of the relationship, aren't I? Or your ability to cultivate one, or, so the ability to actually cultivate a relationship, the ability to communicate beyond just, tasks, responsibilities, duties, to actually getting to understand the individual, their motivators, their why, and understand a little bit more about them. That's what makes you unique, Porsha. That's the reason why we had a conversation for whatever amount of time. It's because we were tuning into each other, right? We were having a conversation with each other, not with our profession.
Exactly.
You weren't talking to, right? You weren't talking to this entrepreneur who works in this industry and that industry. You were talking to Donovan.
Exactly.
And I wasn't talking to this entrepreneur who provides this service. I was talking to Porsha. So when two individuals talk, then at some point, when I need, what? I need a blah, blah, blah. Someone says, I need a publicist that does, oh, you know what? That's what Porsha does. Boom. I make the connection so quick. Why? Because you come to mind, right? So, yeah, the publicist was mentioned, but you come to mind because you're up there. You're someone that's in my mind that's already lingering. And when was the last time I used or had a conversation and was official? We didn't. So why did I make that referral? I made that referral because of the relationship. And from a business standpoint and from a personal standpoint, this ability to develop deep, meaningful relationships is it's a dying art.
Yeah.
It's a dying art. And that's what I feel in terms of one of our major crises today. It's just that. It's the ability to, because of social media, because of the technological age we are currently in, and it's only going to get more advanced, we are losing our personal touch. Our fingerprints are slowly eroding because we are not, we're not in that space where we have the temperament, the aptitude, to really just, focus on deep, meaningful relationships. And I say aptitude on purpose, because if you don't use it, the actual ability will go. It will become foreign to us. It's just like using a language or excuse me, how about this? It's just like how many people right now can write in cursive, right?
I was just saying that, or typing. Literally typing, the home board with not your thumb and your two fingers, but
right.
Everything you're saying is on time and is on point, because I always talk about, even when speaking to my interns or just people who are just asking the basis or the importance of public relations, it's just flip the word around. You're building relationships with your client and the public. And so you have to have that craft, that personality, and that spirit where you can network and you can, convey their story to everyone where they believe you and want to build that relationship. So everything you're saying is so adequate, especially everything is so, on social media or the web. There's no personable touch. I would take more, I would appreciate you more if you sent me a handwritten letter or a thank you note and a card and mail it to me. Snail mail is what they call it. More so than, not saying I disregard the email, but the fact that you took time out, you wrote me a letter or you wrote me a card and you put it in the mail. You thought so much about me that I will make sure I position you in a place where I'm going to think that much about you. So all of what you're saying is just so important, and that's kind of how I think. If I connect with people, I call it you receive my spirit, because you can kind of talk to a million people a day, but not everyone is meant to receive you, or vice versa. And so that was, I believe, appointed. Like, there, you don't meet people by accidents or coincidence. It was basically meant for you to meet. So that's how I feel about every person that I shake hands with or I talk to. So, very good.
You make a lot of sense.
Very, very good. So I have one final question for you, because you and I can talk all day, every day. So the one question I have for you is, what are your words of advice in building relationships, healing, and, just captivating people or a person or a business in a personal space? What is you've probably already touched on it, but if you can narrow it down in one sentence, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to deal with yourself. You need to take inventory. If you're out of a relationship, you need to take inventory as to, who are you now post this relationship? What's changed? What's new about you? How have you learned from the last relationship? Have you forgiven yourself? Have you forgiven others? What can you do to really put yourself in the most healthy of positions and conditions so that you can be able to engage at some point? So doing things to learn more about yourself, and then love yourself, forgive yourself, date yourself, and then put yourself in that pole position that you can now start to engage with others in a way that's very healthy, and reduce the amount of, I say reduce, because it is a process. If it does involve seeing a professional, then do it. Why not? If you want to start with baby steps and just identify someone in your circle that you trust and you can just have some regular conversation with, start there. But you just get it going, because everyone needs it. When you get into that kind of space where you're being more conscious and deliberate about, healing and putting yourself in a good space, that reduces what I call these emotional minds. And when you have emotional mind, these are just issues in the past, the baggage that we often talk about. But, we think that we just put it in the past. The reality is, there's a trigger often that takes place when we get into another relationship situation.
Yes.
And it tricks that mind, and then we go 0 to 60. And, that can be anything from flipping out to straight shutting down. And so we need to be very intentional about identifying what these emotional minds, these different issues in our past that we never really addressed deliberately. If you're in a relationship, take inventory of that relationship in terms of, what you're doing that's right and what you're doing that you need to work on. And so, getting into a space where what I would call, you're willing to do a relationship checkup, and have some conversation about what's new with you. We do evolve, and as someone I remember recently hearing, it's about, when you're in a relationship, being in love with their evolution, and I love that. I love the idea that, right? I love the idea of really embracing the fact that your significant other is changing and evolving, and you yourself being in touch with how you may be changing and evolving as well. So I think that's very important, that you do these relationship checkups to find out what's new, what's different, and also to identify ways that you can continue to work and to put energy in keeping your relationship relevant, current. If you're in a deeper relationship, if you're married, and you are, in that space where, whether you're newlywed or whatever, get into that routine of doing very much similar things, the relationship checkup, but also, practicing what I would call more effective listening. Typically what happens after being married, we tend to, finish each other's sentences and things of that nature, but we also reduce the level of communication, or the quality of communication, because we assume already that, they already know, or that they're already going to respond a certain kind of way. And often we don't really take inventory of how this person may have changed, or give them the opportunity to finish their sentence, or vice versa, give them the opportunity to deal with different thoughts that we have, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they can actually, provide a perspective or a response that you didn't actually anticipate. So, leaving room for growth. And that space is very important when you're married. If you're married and you're just not happy, and there are other things that are going on, again, whether or not you feel like you're about to break up or anything, doesn't matter if you're in a relationship or if you're married, don't wait until the last second to see, a professional. See them now, see them in between. Don't wait until you have, something that is incurable. Check on it now while there might be a little pain there or a little ache somewhere or something. Just do that. Attend to it in a way that, it can be preventive in certain ways from becoming something of a cancer, if you will. So those are my tips in the overall space, but also when it comes to communicating, be willing to be more transparent and show your authentic self, because the reality is the person that you're looking at, the person that you're communicating to, if they are honest with themselves, they're very much human too. And if we can do that and level the playing field, that often has us in a fearful space to be more transparent, we can level that. I believe that we'll have more courage to be able to have authentic conversations, which can lead to deeper, meaningful relationships, and really overall, just you being a happier person overall,
I told you he was good. I'm sitting here in my brain, I'm forming like 15 more questions. And I'm like, God, we got to end. But I mean, just to piggyback off of what he said so many things. So I might have to bring you back, or of course we're going to at the end have people receive all of your information so they can follow you and make appointments with you. But one thing about the healing aspect of self-love, especially if you're a giver. I'm raising my hand. I'm an overgiver. But one thing I started doing, or started doing is I would make a list of all the things that I would do for who I was in a relationship with. So if I took them out to, dinner, then take yourself out to dinner. If I was going to, maybe perhaps go out and give he and her massage, then just take yourself out for the massage. So what I'm saying is all the things that I was doing in my giving heart in love to the other person, then make sure I give it to myself, because in actuality, I think, the giver in so many aspects, you become exhausted. Your spirit becomes exhausted if it's not reciprocated. And not that you're always doing it for the response for it to come back, but you absolutely are wanting someone to love you the same way you love them. So, but anyway, I can go on and on with this person because he has so much information. So Donavan, please give everyone all of your social media handles, your contact information, so they can please make an appointment with him, because he's phenomenal at what he does.
Well, thank you so much. I really received that and appreciate you for taking the time, the mind share, the spirit to invest in me. And to participate in some real, as my colleague would say, some courageous conversation. So I look forward to building with you, and I appreciate you creating, this kind of platform for individuals like myself to share with others in your space. So I'm really grateful for that. For anyone that wants to reach me, and as you mentioned, set an appointment, if they old school with it and you just want to shoot me a text, you can do that at 267-767-5930. That's 267-767-5930. You can shoot me a text and we can talk about possible times to come in for a quick listening session. If you're on Instagram, you can go to @the relationship script, THERELATIONSHIPSCRIPT, @the relationship script. Okay. Or you can also check me out on my personal Instagram @Donavan S West, @DONAVANS West. That's on Instagram, and on Facebook. The relationship script is also on Facebook, and Donavan S West is on Facebook. And there you have it. So you can reach out, and I'll be more than happy to listen and to learn, and then more importantly, to serve. So thank you so much again, Porsha, for all that you do.
Oh, absolutely. And so since this great man shared all of his advice, I'm going to leave you all with the same tidbit of information because it never gets old and it's very, very important, especially from a publicist and branding standpoint. So remember, when you walk in the room and when you walk out of the room, whatever anyone whispers is your brand. So be sure to walk in purpose. Again, thank you so much, Donavan, for being my special guest. And for my listeners, absolutely tune in every Thursday because you never know who my special guest may be to drop amazing jewels in your life. Be blessed. Take care. What another amazing episode this week. Thank you so much for joining us. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Purpose PR Agency, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to tune in next week at 7 o'clock. We look forward to connecting with you.